You are listening to the Political Periscope, a weekly podcast brought to you by Radio WNET. Interviews on international politics, security, geopolitics, economy, and more. Every Thursday at 7 p.m.
Today's guest of the Political Periscope is Alexandr Vondra, member of the European Parliament and former Deputy Prime Minister for European Affairs of the Czech Republic.
Political Periscope.
Since last year, we live in new geopolitical reality. And what is the place of Czech Republic in this reality?
Well, I think that we all have to cope with this new reality. Certainly, the Russia aggressive imperialistic revival is a special concern for all the countries, north to south, who are somehow adjacent to the borders. Although, luckily we do not have any direct border with Russia, like Poland or some others have. So, yes, it means even more than before. To cooperate, to work together, to regain the strength, to arm ourselves, to modernize our armies, to modernize our military infrastructure in the Eastern Theater, and to keep the West united as long as we may. So we really need the United States here, because without the American, without the British support, the Ukrainians would be in much worse situation than they are now. So that's the challenge, let's say, in the Western or in Europe, but then also is the other challenge in the global arena, because, there are two impacts of this Russian aggression. On one hand, luckily it brought some extraordinary amount of the Western unity. On the other hand, the West is isolated more than ever before. If you take the stand of China, India, South Africa, Brazil, and other powerful countries in the global arena, so it's a serious shift from some multilateral dreams into a more multipolar reality, and it brings back a lot of the issues which some idealists consider that are completely outdated, like the meaning of the borders, the access to the raw materials, the number of tanks, and etc. So those are still important issues, like they were.
Czech Republic has always been very close with Germany. But right now we are observing a crisis of German leadership in Europe. What do you think, where this shift in European Union will go, and what Czech Republic will do?
Well, yes, we have Germany as a very important partner in the economy and trade. It's 1/3 of our economic exchange, and it's the largest investor in our country. So yes, if there is a economic problem in Germany, if Germany has some flu, then it's immediately mirrors in our country, even having a greater problem. So we cannot omit what's happened in Germany. Looking on this geopolitical issue or on security in the broader sense, yes, there was a lot of naivety in German thinking in the last couple of decades. There were a lot of they were dreaming, about the world, of peaceful cooperation, love on the global scale. Yes, something what, if this would be a reality, that's not so bad for the states which are not a superpower, and Czech Republic is not a superpower. So these cooperative models are fine, but they must be a reality. But the problem is that this is not as much reality now. So it's a painful and long-time process of mentality shift in Germany. And we'll see, how it is gonna to develop. For the time being, fine. Germans as listening to, thanks God, finally they listen to our warnings. So, I remember how the Poles and Czechs were warning them because of the Nord Stream, and they were always, counter-arguing that, Sasha, don't be afraid, it's not a new pact, Molotov-Ribbentrop, like the Poles were arguing. It's rather a standard relationship between the two business partners, which everybody needs other. But then suddenly they were exposed to a huge amount of vulnerability, and I think wake up into the reality. And the same is with Putin behaving now. So we'll see. I think here the Chancellor's thesis about the Zeitenwende is basically correct. It's after many, many years when I had read some German piece of essay and would rather agree with the content. Those previous contribution by Habermas and others, it was not worth of reading. It was the world of illusion, not of the reality. But now they woke up somehow. But still, it's a difficult debate inside, very different voices, if you take Sarah Wagenknecht and its petition. So, we'll see, I think that the German policy will undergo the rocky times and rough times, and we'll see how it is resulting.
Right now we have a very strange situation because on one hand, we have the rise of meaning of Central Europe states in the EU, such countries as Poland, as Czech Republic. We are being heard. On the other hand, we have Hungary, which is also in Central Europe and which is stopping many initiatives. So what is the current meaning of regional initiatives such as Visegrad Group or the Free Seas Initiative?
I was always defending Viktor Orban when he was fighting for some conservative values. Although, the liberal Czechs were critical about him, so we were divided in my own country on this. Now, I have a problem with his stand towards Moscow. I told them very openly that I'm expecting a shift here because it damaging our effort, But, I would not burn Visegrad group. I think it's a very useful group of countries and mode of cooperation. In fact, it's an opportunity to discuss with the Hungarians because I don't think it makes sense to isolate them. And even during the Czech presidency, for example, we were successfully managing, to find some kind of a solution with regards to some of their vetoes, potential vetoes toward the help to Ukraine in exchange for releasing some of their money which were blocked by the EU. So if there is a communication, we can achieve something rather than by isolating them. But again, I strongly disagree with Viktor Orban's policy towards the Ukraine. I think Ukraine deserves our support and not to put the hurdles into their effort to defend freedom and sovereignty of their country.
It's maybe not the topic number one today because the war is in the headlines, but Free Seas Initiative stays a rather interesting concept here in Central Europe. It was seen by many Western countries as an attempt, maybe alternative for the EU for some countries, but is it really? What can be the role of Free Seas Initiative in the European Union?
No, I don't take it as an alternative to the European Union because, look, Czech Republic is a pro-export country which generates about 80% of our wealth by foreign trade-related activities. So we want to keep our access to the market in Germany, in France, and elsewhere in Europe. In Poland, of course, too. It's a very important trading partner. So it's not an idea to substitute the EU, but it's an idea to complement it with, let's say, building a strong strategic relationship in the north-south axis, and it has two potential important benefits. One benefits with regards to the West to be strong in negotiating some issues within the EU, in particular after the British departure, because here we are missing the Brits, and Polish strengths and determination is the only way how to balance that kind of a loss which we have undergone. In particular, when you are really now building a strong army, for example. And secondly, and it's related with that, it's, a possibility how to invest and modernize into various north and south connection in the eastern part of Europe. And that's strategically very important, even vis-a-vis the Russian assertive policy and the problems in the Ukraine. So it's the way how to help each other in a very strategic way of doing the things. So I'm in favor of deepening the cooperation of Trimarium.
What is the future of the European Union? Is it going towards a superstate or rather towards the collapse? I'm afraid that if we take the road toward the federal superstate, the end could be a collapse, and I don't wish the collapse. Again, I think what we have is free market, common market. It's a great thing which generates a lot of health to everybody. So we need to keep this together, and to build or to continue to transform the EU into some kind of an imperial superpower. It's a nonsense, because there are so, we don't have a single political nation. We even do not have a single language, more integration, but similar, even more Babel Tower syndrome, because everybody is using its own language. The English is going to be beaten now because of the British departure as the only potential lingua franca for us, because, to speak in English, it's fair for everybody from Germany. From Germany to France. So I'm against building a superstate, because that's the prescription for building deep internal structure, divisions and dividing lines, and I don't wish to collapse. So let's keep it, more flexible. Let's not build a kind of a Napoleonic, empire of Europe, but rather developed what we could see in Italy during the Renaissance times, once there were these various city-states cooperating in some strategic issues, but competing among themselves in innovations and businesses. That's generated a lot of progress in science, for example. That's the era which brought Da Vinci, Machiavelli, Leonardo to Europe. So more open, more competitive state, less empire, less not a federation. We are not ready for this. Thank you very much.
Bye.
This was the Political Periscope. The podcast is released every Thursday at 7 p.m.